and welcome back. Today I'm going to look at two Pinocchio films. They both released this year in 2022, which was the Guillermo Del Toro version, which he co-directed, which appeared on Netflix, and there was a live-action remake of the Disney film on Disney Plus, directed by Robert Zemeckis. Now, one of these films was amazing, another one was so terrible I don't ever want to see another Pinocchio film for years. I mean, it was so bad that I'd have to die twice, be reincarnated twice before I'd ever want to see another Pinocchio film. That's how bad it was. It was really terrible. I was going to do a third Pinocchio film until I saw the Zemeckis one, which was the 2019 European one, which starred Roberto Benigni as Geppetto. But after the Zemeckis one, it was like, I just killed my enthusiasm for another Pinocchio film. So, it's an example of what happens when two talented directors take on the same story, one of whom has the freedom and the ability to do something really interesting, one of whom seems to have lost their mind, and made a film that in no way seems to be the work of a sane person, or sane director. So start with the good one, the Del Toro one, which is one of my favourite films this year. It's one of those ones that's hard to describe though, because it's Pinocchio, but it's not Pinocchio. In a sense that it's Pinocchio the book more than Pinocchio the culture iconography that we've seen in the past, like, 100 years, or at least since the Disney film came out, the animated film. Now, if you've read the book, this feels much closer to the book, even though it's not like the book either. But it's got an echo of the book. But it's a bounce off the book by Del Toro, who has a passion for it and wants to do a certain take on the material. And basically, it's funny how this film and the Zemeckis film can share certain plot points, but and certain ideas how to twist Pinocchio into a new film, but can be done so differently. First of all, this is stop motion. Del Toro does a stop motion, so he allows himself to animate it and make it stylized and not be trapped by reality, because he knows this is a fairy story. This is a story that's told from one person to the other. It's got a fairy story feel to it, and he makes it as if it's a film that could have been a story told around a campfire. And you can imagine this version from what you tell. It's got the kind of handmade feel of it, really. And it's an adaptation of Pinocchio that takes place in the 1930s Italy, which was under fascism, under Mussolini. So basically Pinocchio is born because of the death of the son of Geppetto. Geppetto has a son, Carlo, who dies during an accident during World War One, where a bomb drops on the church, and a bombing run mistake, basically, because Carlo was going back to get something from the church when it falls on him and kills him. Geppetto is absolutely destroyed. It's his only son. He's never alone, and he, out of grief, eventually creates. He gets drunk, he gets sad, and eventually, from the grief of that, he chops down a tree and decides to make a toy called Pinocchio that is very much, doesn't look like a boy at all. It looks like a piece of wood that's been carved into kind of human shape. There's a lot of motion in it, but it's not trying to be not trying to represent the sun at all. Thanks to magic, Pinocchio actually is brought back to life by a creature from the supernatural world who feels pity for Geppetto and his loss. At the same time, a creature played by Hugh McGregor also appears. This is a Jiminy Cricket character, but it's not. It's just a bug who's deciding to write his life story when it comes across the Pinocchio story, and he becomes involved by becoming the conscience or the protector of Pinocchio, the person who has to help guide him so that he can have one wish given to him. And he wants that wish so that he can get his autobiography published. So he decides to help for his own selfish reasons. And it's really about how Pinocchio has to try and learn to be, it comes to life, has to try and learn how to fit in with society, has to find out about the kind of darker sides of humanity, with the fascism, and has to learn where he fits into the world. Now, does he want to be a good boy, fit in, and be a conventional boy just like everyone else? Or does he want to be himself, but also be aware of the world and adapt to the world while keeping his core? And that's the kind of element of the film. Because Pinocchio at the start is hyperactive and is obnoxious, but you can tell it's a natural outpouring of somebody who's just come to life and he doesn't understand what anything is. He has to try and figure out how to be, basically. So he has to go to school. And of course, as soon as he's going to school, he gets a monkey, sees it and realizes this is a amazing creature, and he goes to his master, Count Volpe, who runs the big carnival that's pretty much running out of business, and they kind of coerce Pinocchio into being in their show. While Pinocchio's just trying to learn how to survive. He's just trying to figure out how to basically be. And as they go through the adventure of Geppetto raging at Pinocchio at times because he doesn't behave, and Pinocchio trying to learn how to behave, but also going in this carnival to try and make money for his father because his father's running out of money. It's about seeing Pinocchio as something that's not just another human. It's a creature that's trying to work out the human world, but it has its own way of expressing itself. Especially sometimes frustrating, but it's not ill-meaning. There is a kind of depth to it. And it's a sluggish through his adventures, travelling Count Volpe and actually being part of the troupe, learning to fit in, learning when to rebel, and also standing up to Mussolini at one point, being co-opted into service for the troops because he's a creature that cannot die, which fascinates them. So whenever Pinocchio gets shot or killed, he goes to the afterlife where he exists for a short time and then goes back to life again. And during that point, he keeps on asking the creature that runs the afterlife questions about how to try and get better, how to work humanity out a bit more. And she starts to give him life lessons in a very kind of sarcastic way, but and she's warning him, is like, you can't die. Everyone else around you will die. You'll be left alone. So she's saying it's not actually an easy life he's going to have. So they add a lot of stuff that's darker. So a lot of Pinocchio stories, it's always about Geppetto and Pinocchio and them joining forces, really, and them coming together again. And this one is Pinocchio learning how to be, basically. Like, Geppetto's there, Geppetto's important, but Geppetto's a flawed human being, just like everyone else, and Pinocchio has to learn how to love people who are flawed and understand their problems, but also figure out what he needs in his life as well. And when he gets stuck in the army, which is a replacement for Pleasure Island. Instead of Pleasure, they have to go to do drills and get ready to fight for Mussolini, because the whole world's gone crazy that way. It's about Pinocchio learning how to learn the structure, but also learn how to rebel against the structure and realising his own moral code of what he can and can't do, and how human beings can actually twist the moral code through fear and paranoia about other people think, and how they're not really true to themselves. And it's basically Pinocchio learning how to be true to himself, how to, you know, work his way through life. So his so as the film goes on, his big challenges are internal rather than external. The external challenges he has that kind of move on from his internal challenges of learning how to be himself. But it's like those are extensions and are expressions of him sort of slowly growing into himself. Which is a nice little take rather than learn to be a real boy. This is a film where being a real boy is not in any way important. Learning how to be himself is what's important. And it's wonderful. It's got gothic elements, it's got fascist elements in the architecture. So it's like the world of the old world getting changed, with the old world of like Catholicism and superstition slowly changed into the world of machines, and then this creature from the old world, Pinocchio, comes out and just causes chaos everywhere and challenges everyone's beliefs, which causes problems and mocks their beliefs, and it's based about him slowly learning what he is, which is wonderful. The whole film is wonderful. It's one of those films that's a joy to watch the whole way through. Just the craftsmanship of the puppet as it's born, as it learns. The performances of everybody involved. Everybody's giving it their all. Everybody's enthusiastic. I mean, you've got David Bradley's Geppetto. Ewan McGregor is Pinocchio's advisor, a little advisor on his shoulder, who basically sleeps in Pinocchio's heart. You have a monkey that slowly comes round from being an enemy to a friend, voiced by Kate Blanchett of all people. Tilda Swinton as the advisor creature that gave him life and is also helping him figure himself out. Ron Perlman as the fascist. Christoph Waltz as Count Volpe, the guy who runs the carnival, who's a hack, but he wants to get back in with the people in power through Pinocchio because he's desperate for attention, and he's kind of a lot more insecure than he ever lets on, and a lot crazier than he lets on. So all these actors really give it their all and really deliver some wonderful work throughout this film. It's just a beautiful film. Highly recommended. It's worth getting Netflix for a month just to see it. It really is wonderful. Oh, I wish the other film didn't exist. The Zemeckis Pinocchio is the exact opposite. Everything is wrong with filmmaking now, made by someone who should know better. And it's really sad to see someone who had talent just do a film like this, where I don't know if he was disinterested, or I don't know if he was genuinely trying and it just didn't go right. But this film was terrible. This film was genuinely awful and had no point of view, had no understanding of what the story was or what was important. It's amazing the director of Who Framed Roger Rabbit made this film, where Roger Rabbit always kept in line of what the story was and what they had all these little in-jokes, but also had them going along the side of things. In this one, you get in-jokes about other Disney films all the time, and you're sick of them pretty quickly because they're just pandering. Your characters appear because they were in other films, but don't seem to have a purpose in this film. Like the Blue Fairy appears. There's lots of race swap in this film in a way that's really awkward, because this is not a modernised version, or it's not a version that takes place in the 20th century or the 21st century. This takes place far before that, in the 19th century, where this was still the time of slavery. This was still the time of like slave reforms. There was a lot of racial problems in this time. People who came from Africa of black skin would not be treated well by white people in Europe. You might get some lucky in some like more advanced states, but generally not. So if you had dark skin, you would get prejudice. And this film never shows that in a way that stands out as odd. It's like this story comes from this world where there would be prejudice. It just would be. It's to suggest not is ignorant. So there's that element, but there's also that's kind of the least of its problems. I mean, this thing it pulls you out every so often, but the whole film is garish. I mean, there's things that work if it's animated, but do not work live action. Like Geppetto, played by Tom Hanks. Every scene he's in, it's a disaster because he is way too healthy looking to be Geppetto, and he's got this terrible wig on. He doesn't seem to have nailed the character. He doesn't really know how he's going to play this character, and he always looks a bit lost. He always looks too healthy to be Geppetto. The whole time he has to carry around, like it's a cartoon, the fish and the little kitten from the cartoon, from the animated film, which looks absurd and makes a mockery of what he's trying to do when he's trying to find Pinocchio. Pinocchio is a CGI puppet that never looks real. It always looks like a animated thing within the frame. Not only that, the film is shot in a very theatrical way, where it just stays, instead of actually moving in and out of the landscape and creating something interesting, a lot of the time you're just watching Tom Hanks through a stage of what is his home, which is all over designed and very cartoony. So it feels like you're watching a stage play, a really bad one, with not much imagination on it. It just feels non-immersive. It just feels like stagey with all this animation going on in it. And it just pulls you out of it. The performance doesn't work. The plan of the animation doesn't work. So when you bring Pinocchio into it, it's just another layer of artifice. So you're well into the film and you have not in any way connected emotionally to anybody in the film, which is a real problem. Not only that, the film takes forever. It's one of those films that every scene is double the length it should be. So they cut out a lot of stuff from the original film, while the film is longer, and the film just feels long. Every scene feels long. Like there's just too much stuff going on, but slowly. Like, imagine an amateur production of Sergio Leone, camera shots. You know, when the pace of Sergio Leone, where everything goes really slow. Imagine taking away all the good camera moves, all the suitable acting, and just have the slowness. Where scenes that could take 2 minutes take about 5. That's what the first half of this film's like. And it continues throughout the film. Every so often they pace it up a little bit. But that's usually due to certain actors appearing. I mean, the actor playing the Honest John adds some energy to it, much needed energy. And that's the only part of the film that's in any way entertaining. But even then you've got Pinocchio being stupid and the animation doesn't work. The face just looks flat and, you know, it doesn't have the warmth of the animation. You don't imagine a soul behind it. You just feel this is a CGI creature that's people are saying is important to them, but you don't buy it because the performances are wrong. And Pinocchio doesn't really give that much back. It's the same problem that had with Lion King, where the faces, when they're animated, would have been great, but when they're live action, they just look flat. So they just relied every so often on an actor coming in and actually being over the top in a good way. Because most of the time they're over the top, but in a bad way where it feels flat and feels forced. It feels like an actor acting to nobody, which they were. I'm not quite sure how to pitch it, and not getting much help with the director. The whole film also has this problem with the world. Things in animation can have a world that makes no sense to human beings, but makes sense internally. So in this one, you might take Pinocchio and everything else seriously, but it's a thing where seagulls can talk, cats can talk, everything can talk, and people can hear them. And it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It just feels weird. And they never set the world up in a way that makes it feel like it's integral. Because every element seems to be coming from a different film. She's watching this car crash of all these elements in this mega budget film that spent a lot of money and everything, but doesn't really have a soul, like, at all. So the film is just weird. And it's one of those things like Zemeckis as a director when he was younger would have known this is odd, this doesn't work. Because he was very good at getting the tone right in his films when he was younger. And now it just seems he's tone deaf. He doesn't understand how to mix and match stuff he could do in his sleep before. So that's the real problem. And it's also just then the film stops for the sequence where it would be Pinocchio getting kidnapped by the travelling circus and doing the I have no strings sequence, which doesn't work at all. There's no charm to the dancing. Again, you're just seeing a CGI puppet doing this thing. With the Ada sequence with this girl who's got her bad foot and who's got a puppet she manages, and she's a warm relationship with Pinocchio. Again, I said dark skin, and it's as if there would be no prejudice there, and it's like, yeah, there would be, there just would be. It just ignores the reality. Plus, it's not the actress's fault, she's not given anything good to do. She's given a boring part, so she does what she can. So these scenes just drag you down. When you should be about Pinocchio being lonely and trying to learn how to survive. You've lots of scenes of him stuck in this little thing that's a prison, which doesn't look right when it's not animated. And it takes Jiminy Cricket ages to actually find him and help him. So they can have all these meandering scenes with him and the girl go on forever, which has no point in the film. So the film just meanders. Then he goes to Pleasure Island, and it's just garish garbage. Luke Evans shows up as a guy taking him there. He's a lot of energy, he's doing his best, but he's over made up, and the film there doesn't have any teeth, and it just feels like it's another set piece of things happening, but there's nothing really there that's actually terrifying. And when you turn it into donkeys, it feels like a special effects showcase. There's no feeling in those sequences of something horrific happening, because you still have no connection to Pinocchio or any other characters I've just introduced, because everyone's either overacting or underacting. The world just feels wrong. She's watching this thing happen in front of you. It's just not really working at all. Eventually you get the final sequences where he rescues Geppetto, and where in the old film he'd become a real boy, in this film he stays a puppet. And it just ends. There's no sense, because Tom Hanks is such a disaster as Geppetto, and this CGI creature that's meant to be Pinocchio have scenes together, but you have no connection to any of them, because none of the performances work, none of the technology works, none of the drama that's meant to be there works, because they're trying to mix whimsy, humour, action, adventure, and it's just, the editing is just weird as well. It's not edited in a way, or even framed in ways that makes you connect to actually anything going on in front of you. It always just feels like one step distant. It's a film you're just analysing why is it not working rather than actually enjoying it. It's just every scene just seems to be failing in different ways, consistently failing. Every element's quietly failing, and it just creates this disaster of a film where it's like, how does someone so talented fail so badly? It's like, how can almost nothing work in this film? It's one of those films that's like, I'd be surprised if Zemeckis gets another gig for a while. But then again, he made Welcome to Marvin, which had that same reputation, and The Witch even has that same reputation. So he's had 3 films in a row now that have the reputation of being awful. I mean, I liked Zemeckis for a long time as a director. I mean, I even was defending his 2000s Beowulf and Christmas Carol films and stuff, which had the dead eye problem. But this stuff is made by a director who's just lost the plot. I mean, I really liked The Walk, which was only 5-6 years ago. So he still was talented then and capable of making good films then. Now it just seems like he's just completely lost it. like, I couldn't believe how bad some of the reviews have been getting recently were until I saw this film and was like, oh, I get it. I really get it. So this one is, just try and avoid it. It's terrible. But go see the Del Toro one. The Del Toro one is charming and perfect and does everything you really want from Pinocchio. It's got a soul. It understands the medium to make the story work and the variations of movement of the character in the frame to actually create emotion in a way that the Zemeckis one doesn't even understand how to move character in a frame and not make it look fake and weird and disconnected, is what Del Toro does naturally. So, yeah. One best of the year, one worst of the year. That's how we can sum this up. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back soon. Bye.